Hello! I said I wanted to make a video and I did record a lot of stuff I wanted to edit, and then I realized that I don't really enjoy editing that much. So this is the video. I'm just gonna use Paint. I know how to use Paint, it works. So, a bunch of time ago, not too long ago, I wanted to make a game. I wanted to make it so you have some mazes, maybe, I don't know, you go through a certain maze and then another one loads, okay? And I wanted it to be basically a roguelike, right? So you start from here, I don't know, there are some enemies, and you do the thing, you go out, you fight, and everything you do, you know? But because I do speedruns of some games and stuff, I thought to myself, what if, even though everything you do in a roguelike is basically random, at least the amount of steps you need to take isn't random. So maybe I could make a program where this maze has a set length for its optimal path. And that was the idea. So just to show you, let's say that my algorithm can make different kinds of mazes, as you can see here, but the length of the optimal path to reach the end is always, in this case, like 19 tiles long. Actually 20 if you count the last tile, but you get the idea. That was what I had in mind. And yeah, great. And then I thought about it and I realized it's a terrible idea. It's a terrible game. But I was able to kind of think about an algorithm that does exactly that kind of maze, and I didn't want to make it go to waste. And so I decided to make a different game. So first of all, I'm not going to explain what the game is yet. Just let me explain to you and what is the difficulty in making the algorithm. So we have a grid, right? And our maze will be born inside of this grid soon, but the problem is that making a random maze is actually kinda easy. Like, what you just need to do is that you start from the very beginning of the maze and you randomly go around, basically. So I don't know, I start from here and then I move here and then here. I always choose a random direction, one that is available, of course, so I need to remember which tiles I have visited, until I reach the end, basically. Or I get stuck, and if I get stuck I can try to backtrack. Let's say that I get stuck. So this is the end. Let's say this is the end, this X is the beginning. So let's say that I am randomly going and then at some point I do this and I get stuck. What I can do is backtrack. So I delete this, I take the other option, and then I go, and maybe I get stuck again, and I backtrack, and you get the idea, right? And then you reach the end. Easy, no problem whatsoever. But this path, how long it is, I don't know. It is completely random. That's the problem. That's the problem with this idea. So what I did initially was something basically similar to this. I didn't do anything too fancy. I did go randomly, so let's say that my maze starts here, this is the beginning, this is the end, and I need to go for like 10 tiles. 10 is my number. So I start randomly, I randomly go about, and if I reach the end, and this is obviously not a correct solution, this path is not 10 long, it's way shorter. I backtrack, again, it's the same thing. I backtrack and I choose another option and I move forward until, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, okay, there is a problem here that I'm gonna go through in a second. So let's say that the ending is actually here. And I do this, and this is correct, or it should be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go, we did it. So, let me talk to you about the problem that we just encountered. So there is a parity problem. What that means is in this case, because the distance between the beginning and the end, and the concept of distance that I'm using is basically how many steps you need to take if the maze had no walls whatsoever. So I can just go like this, which is 1, 2, 3. It's 3. The distance is 3, right? This means that the only possible paths are the ones that have an odd number of steps. You can imagine the labyrinth being divided in a chess-like grid. So something like this. Maybe every other tile is red, right? And if you, I don't really have a proof, but if you think about it, it makes sense that whenever you want to move, you're constantly moving from one red tile to one white tile, right? So if I'm here and I move, I need to move to a white tile. There's no other option. So if I start from a white tile and I want to end up in a red tile, I need to do an odd amount of steps, right? Because if I were to do an even amount of steps, it would be like white, red, white, red, white. Actually the opposite. It would be red, white, and I made 2 steps. Red, white, and I made 4 steps. And every even amount of steps, I return to a white tile. So you can see that there is some more consideration we need to do. And I did. So in my code, there is a line that basically says, okay, select a random place for the beginning of the maze. Okay. But then when you want to select a random place for the end of the maze, if you select one that doesn't respect this parity, like let's say that I wanted the path to be of a length 10. I know that 10 is even, okay? This is an even number. If when I select the ending, I can easily calculate the distance by doing like the vertical difference plus the horizontal difference. And if this number ends up not having the same parity as the number that I want, so in this case the result is 3, which is odd, and these parities are not the same, then I pick another one. I'm like, nope, this is not a good one, let's pick another one. And maybe I pick this one and this one works. So yeah, there is a line of code that does this. So this was a small problem that I had. Also, and this might not seem too interesting, but or rather too difficult, but I had to take into consideration how I made walls. Okay, so if I start from here, okay, this is the beginning, this is the end, and I need to move. So let's say that I decide to move upwards, then I need to build some walls in the correct locations, right? I need to build this wall. So that took a little bit of messing around, but by every step of the way, remembering where I come from, I could it wasn't too difficult to make the walls work. So just to make you see what you would need to do, even like if you were to like explain via text to someone how to do it, there is a little bit of thought behind it. Because like I move here, which means that in the previous tile I need to wall every direction that is not the one that I choose. So in this case, there's only this wall, but we will see that there are more cases. Now I'm here and I want to move here, so okay, if I move here, I need to wall every other possibility, so I make this wall. But every other possibility would also be this wall, right? Because from this tile, I could have moved like up, left, even though not really, right and down. So that's why you need to kind of remember the previous direction in which you were going, so that you can make a check to say, nope, this doesn't need to be a wall. This needs to be free. And then you go from there, like if this is the next tile, you draw these walls, and at some point you end up with something like this. Okay? And we have our path. Let's say that this is our path, the one we want. The last thing I need to do is to make the rest of the maze, because this is not a maze. Absolutely not. So, what I decided to do is, let's go through the entire maze randomly. Let's pick a random tile every time and check if it is a tile that is part of what I have already built or not. If it's not, like in, let's say that I randomly pick this tile, I note that this tile isn't part of the maze yet. I haven't touched it, which is good. I want those kind of tiles. So what I do next is I check for the neighboring cells, like this one, this one, this one, and this one, and I check if there is a wall, basically, because that means that the cell next to me is actually part of the maze, and I want that. So let's say that I check this one. I see that this is a cell that has already been visited. I note it. Okay, so I note it, and that's great. Now, what I do is I use basically the same algorithm as before. I start from this cell and I randomly move around and I build walls while I do it. So let's say that I go here, and so I build this wall, then I go here, so I build this wall, and then here, and I continue forward until I get stuck, and as soon as I get stuck, this ends and I have built another corridor. The only thing left for me to do is to delete the wall that separates the cell that I have selected to the neighboring cell that was part of the maze before. And I just did this until the maze was all finished, and this will give you a result something like this. So let's say that I select this cell and I delete this wall, and then I move around and I do something like this because I move this way, basically. And then maybe I bring down this wall, and that's basically the end of the algorithm, because now if I bring down this wall and I move here, then I finish the labyrinth, the maze. So now I have a functioning maze. There are a lot of X's. I'm gonna delete them because this is gonna make everything a bit easier to see. But we have a functioning maze, or kinda. I mean, this is enough, but I wanted to do something a little bit more challenging, because, or rather, a little bit more confusing, because as you can see, this is still kind of a corridor. Like, you have branching paths, but you never have a situation where you can get backward. Like, you can get back to the original path. Like, if I'm going here, as soon as I diverge from the original path, I am at a dead end. Like, I cannot go back to where I was. I need, or rather, I wanted to put more openings. But where should I basically bring down walls? Because if I were to bring down a random wall, well, in this case it wouldn't really matter much, but if I were to bring down a random wall, there is a chance that the distance, the shorter distance between the beginning and the ending tiles would would decrease. And that's not what I want, absolutely not. So one thing that I did is, while I did everything that I already did, like generating the main path and generating the branching paths, I also kept track of two values for every single tile of the maze, for every single one. So let's take one tile in isolation. This tile has two values inside of it. One is the distance from the beginning, which I'm gonna call dB, and the other one is the distance from the end. So if I were to take this tile is like 1, 2, 3. It has 3 as the distance from the beginning, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as the distance till the end. Okay, and if I sum these two values up, so if I were to sum them, I would get 8, which is basically the shortest path that you can take, the length of the shortest path you can take that passes through this tile. And this is the important part, because now if I decide to randomly take away some walls, I can do some calculations. So if I want to take away this wall here, I can look at the values for the distances in this tile here and this tile here, and I can sum them up. So basically I can do something like if I add the distance, the dB, the distance from the beginning in this tile, and then distance from the end in this tile, I add them up, and I add 1 because I'm doing one step to pass from one tile to the next. So basically I have dB from tile 1, so dB1 plus dE from tile 2 plus 1, which I'm gonna write here. If this value is smaller than my desired length of the path, which I'm gonna call L right now, if this happens, then I know that I shouldn't bring down this wall, and so I'm gonna keep it there. I'm not gonna touch it. Obviously, you need to do another check. You need to check the symmetric possibility, where you have the dB from the second tile and the dE from the first tile. But once you do these two checks, you're fine. If you pass these two checks, if this value and this value are both not smaller than the length of the path, then you're free to go. You can bring down that wall. I also added a little thing where if I bring down a wall, I kind of flag every tile around in such a way so that I know not to bring down any wall around that area, because I didn't want an area of the maze to look way too empty. And this definitely works. This works. There is a problem. For the game that I wanted to make, and I have yet to tell you what it is, I'm gonna tell you now. So the game that I wanted to make works like this. So you actually don't have just one maze. You have two. They are different, and this is a multiplayer game. So one player plays on the first maze, and one player plays on the second maze. So let's say that I am player 1, and let's say that I'm basically at the end, I'm basically here, and then I take the next step and I finished it. Let's go, I was able to do it. So what happens next? What happens next is that every maze gets refreshed. Like, the game basically takes these two mazes, says, I'm gonna delete them, and I'm gonna create two new ones. Okay? But because I won before, because I was able to reach the end of my maze is gonna be basically the same. Like, the distance between the beginning and the end is gonna increase only by 1. But the other maze, the one my opponent is playing on, the distance between the beginning and the ending for my opponent maze is gonna get way longer. Okay? Actually, not really way longer. I had like a variable that sets how much longer, but whatever. And this is basically the game. And the winner is, well, basically there is one loser, and it's not like there is one winner. The loser is whoever gets a maze that is where the length of the path is way too long. So basically, this is kind of weird to explain, but let's say that at some point you get a maze where from the beginning, and actually the beginning and the ending can be in every possible tile. So let's say this is the beginning, this is the end, this is the end, and let's say that your shortest path right now is something like this, where you visit basically every tile in the maze. Okay? So if the opponent wins another round, the game needs to refresh this maze with an even more difficult one, but that's impossible. There is no more difficult maze than this one. So that's when you lose. You lose when your maze is already as difficult as it can be and the opponent wins another round. I hope that was clear, because that's the hard part to explain. So yeah, I had a working game right now. Even though it was kind of rough, I had a working game. But there's a problem. As I said before, the way I calculated the shortest, not the shortest path, but the correct main path between beginning and end, it was basically random. I was just taking random directions until I got what I wanted. And that's fine until you get towards the end of the game. Because at the end of the game, again, you need to generate mazes that are really difficult, where you need a very winding path. And that's randomly getting a path like this is very, very hard. So my program had to try so many times in order to get something like this. So many that it was too slow. Like my program stopped. It was eventually able to do it, but I cannot have it in this kind of game. Like I can't have a person losing because its own maze takes way too long to load. That's unacceptable. So I had to think about something else. And I found a solution. It took me forever to be able to implement it because it is admittedly way more complicated, but it works. And this solution works like this. So let's say this is the beginning, this is the end. The first thing I do is I randomly move in a direction, but not every possible direction. I randomly move in a direction that gets me closer to the end. So in this case, because the end is both to the right of the beginning and to the down of the beginning, I have these two options. I can either move right or down. And then I keep doing that again and again, and I get basically a stair, something that looks like this. Okay? And this is the shortest path you can take, one of the shortest paths you can take. But this path is not necessarily long enough. Usually it is not long enough. I need to make it longer. So one thing that I did was, as soon as I have this path, I start from the beginning, I move a random amount along the path. I basically traverse the path, and let's say that I stop here. Okay? I stop there. I check if I have like two tiles next to one another, and I check if I have also two empty tiles, like either on top or on the bottom, or every possible symmetric situation you can have. And if I have something like this, and let me make it bigger, so this is basically a zoomed in version of what I'm doing, and this path, let me do it with a different color, so the path is this, okay? So if I have this situation, what I can do, I can extend the path by doing something like this. And obviously I need to delete this connection. So to do it, well, in principle it's quite easy, but because I had to mess around with every possible orientation, and I didn't do every orientation separately, I just had some strong enough code that could handle every symmetric possibility, every orientation, every rotation. It was kind of messy. And also remember that I also need to draw the walls, because initially the walls were like this, right? These were the walls. But my new walls are something like this. And also this one is one that I need to add. So yeah, that's definitely a lot of work that I had to do, but I did. There is one other thing that I did, which doesn't make the path longer, but it makes things a bit better. Sometimes, if you do this over and over, obviously you're gonna, well, not obviously, but more often than not, you're gonna end up with a very squiggly path, right? From beginning to end. And if that happens, you can run in the situation where it is impossible to extend it anymore. And also it is kind of windy, it's a bit, I don't know, I didn't like it. So another thing that I did is like a lengthening thing. Not really, what I did is that whenever there was like a turn, randomly I could flip the turn. So if this tile is empty, and basically the tiles are like this. So these are my tiles. And if this tiles is empty, then I can flip the direction of the turn. So do something like this. And while this doesn't seem like it would do much, if you have a really windy path, by doing this over and over, especially when you cannot when you cannot lengthen the path anymore, this can get you out of that situation. This can straighten the path. So these are the two things that I did. Everything else in the algorithm remained the same. And then, well, the game worked. I had some friends test it. I had something that works, but I wanted to do more. And I added some power-ups. I'm not gonna go into the details about how I implemented them. I'm just gonna explain what they are. And then I added a counter at the beginning. I added a menu. Well, the menu only has one button, but whatever. And this is the game. This is the game. I can show you. So you press play. There is this very obnoxious sound which I made by using the code. And this is the game. So the left maze is controlled with WASD, the right maze is controlled with arrow keys, and the goal is the very, very ugly looking goal. I choose such a weird color for it. One thing that I wanted to go into details that I'm gonna do now, let's take a look at the right maze. So if I hold right, this is gonna happen. So the first movement, I'm gonna stop, and then I'm gonna move every frame. Well, not really every frame, but whatever. That's a detail. But yeah, I implemented basically a cooldown, because otherwise the game would have been really, really annoying to play. Because, like, let's say that I need to turn up like this, and by mistake I overshoot it, because like it's very difficult to just move one tile, and so I added a cooldown for that reason. Anyway, also the power-ups, I made it so they appear more often to the person that is losing. So let me go through this and let's see if I can see some power-ups. Oh wow, second player is getting very unlucky. Okay, the first power-up, I feel like just by seeing it you can kinda guess what it does, but yes, it does refresh the maze of the opponent. But also, it refreshes it in such a way that I get reset to the beginning. Like, now I'm in the right maze, I'm very close to the finish, but let's see what happens when I take this power up. Ta-da! So the right maze got refreshed. It didn't get more difficult. The length of the maze remained the same, but it got refreshed. So let's see which else power-ups we have. Okay, this is the end. The obnoxious sounds. They are so obnoxious. Let's see. Come on, give it to me. Okay, second power-up. This one you might be able to guess what it does, but it makes you go through walls. You can go through 10 walls. So now, as you can see, ta-da! I'm able to go through walls. Let's go! Obviously, as soon as you go through enough walls, the power-up gets deleted, let's say. The last power-up is the really interesting one code-wise, because I pulled up Bethesda and I was like, hey, I have a bug. What if it was actually not a bug but a feature? And I really want it to show up, but it's not showing up. So, one last time, hopefully. I don't wanna get to the point where I need to cut the video, but I don't have to, because this is the power-up. This is supposed to be like an ice cube, but I don't know what I drew. What happens, as I said before, I have like a cooldown when I hold down a key in order not to overshoot where you need to turn. Well, what if I took it away? So if I collect this power up on the left maze, the right maze is gonna get very difficult to control. Like, as you can see, I move really fast, but it's very difficult to like tap only once Like if I need to take a turn, like I want to go up here, it was very difficult to go up here. So that's the last one, the last power up. And this game is now live. You can download it for free. Technically, you can donate money if you really want to. I don't know why you would. But I leave the link of it in the description. And I don't know, have fun. Don't know what else to say.